We are actually here at the NDN Collective Headquarters in Minuluzaha, Rapid City, and we're just about to get ready to do a press conference. We're going to shift in just a minute to our lobby, where we're going to hear from a few of our NDN Collective staff to talk about some really big and significant developments in the civil rights trial against the Grand Gateway Hotel. Today was actually supposed to be the first day of the Grand Gateway trial, where NDN Collective filed a lawsuit back in March of 2022 against the Grand Gateway Hotel. Today, it's been a series of a couple years, almost going on 3 years of events to bring us here today. But over the course of the weekend, a major turn of events with the Retsel Corporation, who owns the Grand Gateway Hotel, filed for bankruptcy, effectively putting all legal proceedings to a halt. So that's what brings us here today. While we were last week preparing for the trial, we are now in this moment of pivot. But for those of you joining us who might not know what the civil rights lawsuit was about, I want to make sure and update everyone. And so you may remember back in March of 2022, there was a tragic death of a Lakota man named Blaine Puyer at the Grand Gateway Hotel. And we want to acknowledge firstly and foremost the family of Blaine and all of his loved ones who continue to be over the past few years as well, dealing with all of the heartache and all of the things that follow losing a loved one. After Blaine lost his life at the Grand Gateway Hotel, Connie Uri, the owner of the Grand Gateway Hotel, made some public comments on social media that took fire right away. She essentially said, on a public platform where it was very visible to others, that the Grand Gateway Hotel was no longer going to serve Native Americans, and that she couldn't tell who was a good Native or a bad Native. And in that same comment, in that same post, while she publicly stated that Native Americans cannot be patrons at the hotel, she also invited hunters and travelers to come into the hotel, saying that they would get a special rate. And so just very callously, you can tell just in her statements alone, that's just really a elated statement in and of itself. Shortly after those statements were made, they were shared all throughout social media. So she stated an intent to violate the civil rights of Native Americans, because it is a violation of civil rights to discriminate somebody's service based on their race. But not only did Connie Uri make that threat, she actually acted on it, not once, but 2 times immediately following that threat. And both of those times were actually documented and recorded. The first time when a staff member of NDN Collective, Sunny Red Bear, went in and got an audio recording, which will actually drop into the chat for those of you interested in kind of going back into the timeline of how we all got here. So Sunny Red Bear went to the Grand Gateway Hotel requesting a room, and she was in fact denied service. A day later, we had other members of NDN Collective staff go and get a video recording of the same exact thing happening. Going up to the front counter was Alberta Eagle, one of our staff, and NDN Collective, we are a remote organization and we bring people in all the time. So when she attempted to book a block of rooms there, while on certain online platforms it showed that there were rooms available, our staff were denied rooms. And so not once, but 2 times did the Grand Gateway follow through on that threat. So it was then, shortly after, that NDN Collective filed this civil rights lawsuit. A bunch of other things happened immediately after that, because this was posted publicly on social media, a lot of people knew about it all over. And it also really struck a nerve with a lot of people here locally, because in the state of South Dakota, in the Dakotas moreover, where Native American people are the largest minority group in a state it's predominantly white, like the racism is really palpable. And there's a long history of racism here in the state and in the Dakotas and in this continent moreover, but it's not always caught. It's not always so visible. But in that moment when civil rights were violated, as an organization that is dedicated to defending the rights of Indigenous people on one hand while also building solutions, we had to take action. So utilizing the our collective efforts, utilizing our various strategies, legal and organizing strategies, we felt compelled to take this action on behalf of all Indigenous people who, we haven't always been in a position to take that action. But the civil rights lawsuit was filed. Then shortly after, there were a number of marches that were organized in the city where hundreds came, including several tribal leaders, representatives from tribal governments. There was one rally and march that took place and culminated in the front of the courthouse, and there was a press conference there. A couple days later, there was another march where tribal chairpersons, representatives of the tribal nations of South Dakota actually delivered an eviction notice and placed it in front of the Grand Gateway Hotel. And so this isn't obviously just an NDN Collective thing. This was an effort, and this was grassroots and community organizing. It was a bunch of people coming together saying no more. We're really ready to stand together. And I think it's also really important to keep in mind too, amidst all of this, that, as we mentioned at the top of this live stream, that there is a family still in mourning, and that family's loss was also made very public and became the springboard of racism. And so therein lies, what we often experience is just racial profiling and assuming the worst of us, and then all of our people paying a price because of somebody else's racism. Shortly after the marches, there was a series of boycotts that were also organized, and NDN Collective, alongside many of our other partner organizations in the city of Rapid City, organized a picket line in front of the Grand Gateway Hotel. There were a number of efforts to educate the community and inviting even local businesses here to take a stand against racism. So here we are now, flashing forward to where we're at. Over the course of the past couple years, legal proceedings take time. So clearly, we're in this third year, flashing forward to present times. We're going to hear now from 3 members of our NDN Collective team to tell us what this means now. So we're brought here. Is this a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Not going to give. I don't want to give too much context because they're the best at doing that. But I will say this is actually a really, in a way, a win for NDN. We're aware that the Retsel Corporation and the Grand Gateway, they know that there's compelling evidence against them. And so up next, we're going to hear from NDN Collective President and CEO Nick Tilsen, our Associate Director of Organizing, Sunny Red Bear, and Director of Strategic Partnerships, Dr. Val Big Eagle. They will be addressing the press. We have some press outside in the lobby. And right after they share some statements, the press is going to ask some questions. And then we'll be back afterwards to wrap up with some closing statements. But thanks so much for being with us. Please like and share and engage with our live stream, comment. It helps us get the word out there and let people know that we're going to fight, and we're also going to build at the same time, and that we have to make these stands in order to make a better life for our people and our communities. But thanks so much for being with us, and we'll go over to the live stream now, or the press conference.
Nick Tilsen, my name is Nick Tilsen. I'm the president and CEO of NDN Collective and a father here in the Minnelusa community. And we come today with some news. For the past 2 years, we have been in litigation against the Grand Gateway, specifically the Retsel Corporation, that is the owner of the Grand Gateway Hotel. And just to remind folks, what led to this litigation was that the owners of the Grand Gateway and the Retsel Corporation made comments that they could not tell the difference between the bad Indians and the good Indians, so they were going to refuse service to both. And then that's actually what they did. They refused service to members of the community. They refused service to members of NDN Collective. And that act of refusing service is what led us to litigation, because they violated certain provisions of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, where we are given equal rights through that act. And over the past 2 years of litigation, we have engaged in depositions. We have participated in the process and have followed all of the laws all along the way. And we were actually set to be in court today. Right now is when we were supposed to be set to be in court. They tried, the other side has tried several times to delay the trial over and over and over. And then yesterday, we received notice from our attorneys that the Retsel Corporation has filed for bankruptcy. And that's what brings us to the current events of today. We'll get into this a little bit later, but to be clear, it's an administrative bankruptcy. What happens under administrative bankruptcy is they try to reorganize their debts and their structure. We see it as a mechanism. We see it as a mechanism to delay the trial. At the end of the day, the Retsel Corporation basically had no out at this point. And they used the bankruptcy provision as a mechanism in a way to then delay the trial. And so that's where we're at now, because now bankruptcy has to deal with we have to deal with the bankruptcy laws before we deal with the civil rights case. But at the same time, I wanted to make sure that the community knows that this is also a good thing, because there should be zero tolerance for racism in our community, and racism should be not allowed here in our community. And there's a cost for racism. When you become both morally bankrupt as a result of racism, it could lead to you becoming financially bankrupt. And so it's not a small thing to go through bankruptcy. They'll be going into all of their financials. Many of those things will be made public to us, and we will continue to hold them accountable. But it does absolutely feel like that justice is delayed at the moment, and it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good, because we wanted to see racism on trial, and we wanted to be able to make sure that all the people, because we recognize that us sitting up here, and those of us that are plaintiffs in this, that we are not the only impacted people by this, that this impacted people throughout Indian country, people directly in this community and throughout Indian country, and that we as plaintiffs are sitting here representing how Native people have been impacted, the fact that our civil rights could be violated, and that we can be dehumanized in our community. So that is the short update that we have. I'll pass it over to Sunny to share some deeper context.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. My name is Sunny Red Bear. I am the Associate Director of Organizing at NDN, Minikoji, Hunkpapa, and Oglala, Dakota. I'm a mother of students in the Rapid City area schools. I'm a community member. And I kind of wanted to just zoom out a little bit. I wanted to talk about how this is so much bigger than the Uri family. This is so much bigger than the Grand Gateway trial as a whole. This trial is more than just one business or one family. It's about systemic discrimination that has impacted Native people in every corner of Rapid City throughout generations. The Uri family and the Grand Gateway Hotel are just symbols of a much larger and deeply ingrained racism that continues to thrive in institutions across our city. And this is really just a byproduct of racism. So systemic racism, it extends far beyond businesses and every institution, and we're seeing this in our community. And we've seen this racism in the Rapid City area schools, where Native students face disproportionate expulsions, criminalization, and discriminatory practices that were actually outlined by the Office of Civil Rights Investigation and report. And this is the school-to-prison pipeline that we talk about. We also see this within the Rapid City Police Department, where Native Americans are disproportionately targeted, harmed, and killed without accountability. So racism is embedded in every part of life for Indigenous people, from businesses, schools, law enforcement, and beyond. So I wanted to connect the dots a little bit here when we talk about the Rapid City versus Racism campaign. You know, racism that we're challenging in the Grand Gateway case reflects the same patterns of practice of exclusion, violence, and oppression of Native people face daily in other systems. And we've endured these injustices in our schools and through discriminatory practices and policies like the over-policing of Native students, and in law enforcement with the continued disregard for Native lives by the Rapid City Police Department. So this trial really just exposes racism that persists in every area of life for Indigenous people here. And we talk about, you know, we had conversations the other day just amongst ourselves thinking about how this is really a fight for civil rights in Rapid City here today. You know, the struggle we're engaged in mirrors the battles of the civil rights movement of the 1960s. You know, back then they fought to dismantle segregation, and here we're fighting against systemic racism in Rapid City 2024. So, like the civil rights movement, this fight is about confronting deeply rooted systems of inequality, and the Grand Gateway trial is just one part of such a larger battle for justice and equality. And the Uri family may have sparked this trial, but we're here to address the broader system that has allowed such blatant racism to go unchecked for so long. So now is the time for every institution in Rapid City to be held accountable. I want to remind our city of that accountability does not go unchecked. And we believe that as Lakota people, and physically, spiritually, there's different ways that we believe that there's accountability playing out in our city. And right now, businesses, schools, and law enforcement are perpetuating racism. And they need to face their roles in maintaining that inequality. You know, this trial is a crucial step, but it's just the beginning. And the fight for justice in Rapid City won't stop until every system is held accountable for the harm that it has caused Native people. So we're challenging Rapid City to make a choice, continuing allowing racism to fester or stand up and reject it once and for all. And that's what Rapid City versus Racism is. So I wanted to give a little bit of context and touch on some of those points that are very important to speak about. You know, this is not just the Uri family. We're not focusing on that. You know, it's not just one police officer. These are systems that have been put in place to oppress our people. And it's time to bring accountability and to show what accountability can look like. I think a lot of times we say the word, but then we're like, what does that really mean? What does that look like to us? And we're here to show it through actions and to give different ways, you know, alternatives to what already exists. You know, dream bigger. Let's create what we want to see in our community. You know, we're not here to just point fingers and say, you're doing this, you're doing that. We're also here to create solutions. And we're here to create solutions together. So, yeah, I'll pass it over to Valeriah here.
Dr. Valeriah Big Eagle, I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships. And really speaking to this as a mother and as a community member, I know that our community, our ancestors, I know a lot of unchis, grandmothers, and lalas, gakas, grandfathers that have been fighting racism and discrimination in our community for generations. There's a reason why this community is called Racist City. It's not known to us as natives as Rapid City, it's Racist City. It's because we have known these things have been happening for generations. And this is more, again, you'll hear this again and again, this is more than just a trial. This is more than the Uri family. This is about saying racism is not tolerated in our community and we must do something about it. And as a mother, I want my children to feel safe in this community, to be able to go into those schools and be able to learn who they are, where they come from, and be proud of that. I don't want them to go into the schools and feel like, gosh, I can't be Lakota. I have to be, you know, what they tell me to be. I have to learn those things or what that looks like. And so even, thinking about our elders and everything they've gone through. I know my Unchi, she tells this story, and she's no longer here anymore, but she remembers walking the streets of Rapid City and seeing those signs that say, no Indians allowed. And she asked her, Ate, Dakue, why? And he said, because they don't know us. And she always said, they still don't know us. And this shows, even with this happening, the Uri family discriminating against Indigenous people, they still don't know us. This means, our community, we deserve to be heard. We deserve for people to know us. Indigenous and non-Indigenous people coming together and feeling like this place, we have a sense of belonging, of community, of inclusiveness for all of us. I want my children to feel like it's not racist city anymore. I want this to be their home, and I want them to be safe and to feel like they can be who they are in our community. And so this is a bigger representation of that, and that this change, this trial can be that tide of change for this community.
If you think about this in historical context, the 1964 Civil Rights Act came into an existence at a time in which civil rights activists like Martin Luther King, like Fred Hampton, Angela Davis, many people who took to the streets to stand up, and they pressured Congress to create the Civil Rights Act. Some of those people, like Martin Luther King and Fred Hampton, gave their lives. They gave their lives. They died for that act to be. And for us to be sitting here, whether it be in 2022, when the owners of the Grand Gateway repeatedly denied access to Native American people to use their hotel, or whether you were sitting right here in 2024 where they're using the bankruptcy law provision as a way to escape accountability and to run from accountability, it is a complete disrespect to the legacy of Martin Luther King. It's a complete disrespect to the generation that has come before us, who sacrificed for this law to exist here. They wanted this law to exist because they wanted people to exercise it and to lean on it, to advance equal rights for all people, for all people. And that's why, this lawsuit is so much about making this community a better place for everybody. Racism is dangerous for all people. The minute that we start dehumanizing one another, and the minute that we start having the lack of people seeing each other as human beings, it creates a more violent place in our community. And that's why so much of this lawsuit is about solutions. It is about moving this community forward. It is about making sure that we make a culture in this community that it's unacceptable for racism to be in this community. Whether you're white, whether you're Native American, that we as a people all come together to say this is non-acceptable. This is not acceptable in our community. And, and we don't see the owners of the Uri family, owners of the Retsel Corporation, wanting to step up to the plane of accountability, wanting to recognize that this community actually needs healing and accountability for us to move forward. And so it will be delayed. But to be very clear, very, very clear that we're not going anywhere, that this trial might be delayed, but the lawsuit is going on. The lawsuit is going to go. We will see our day in court. Racism will be on trial in this community, whether it be towards the end of this year or in the spring of 2025 or whenever it has to be. In the meantime, every business owner in this community should recognize and think about how they treat Native American people here. They should recognize that racism is not accepted in this community. And if you perpetuate in this community, you will be held accountable. Native American people and our allies in this community is done turning the other cheek. We're done. We're done with that era, and that people will be held accountable here, both in the private sector and in the public sector, because that's what needs to happen. We need to build new culture in order to move our people forward. And so I ask us to think about those things. You know, when you look in the historical, whether it be the lunch counter sit-ins in Birmingham, Montgomery, Alabama, and then you see the Indians being denied service here today, that's a continuum of that struggle. And at this moment in the history, it is absolutely imperative that we as a people come together to stand up against racism and recognize when we say Rapid City versus racism, we mean everybody. We mean everybody in Rapid City of all walks of life versus racism. And I go back to when this incident first happened and when we first filed this federal lawsuit and when we first marched, there was people from all walks of life who came because they seen this as an injustice. And I encourage people in the Rapid City community to continue to stand up and to have our allies stand up too, not just Native people standing up to racism, but having our allies and our accomplices and people who care about justice in this community to make a stand against racism. Lastly, I just want to address this loophole. You know, the loophole of the bankruptcy filing. You know, bankruptcy law and bankruptcy filings is purely a stall tactic here. And they aren't going bankrupt yet. This is an administrative bankruptcy filing. And so it was really used as a delay tactic to delay having to go into court today because they were not ready to go to court, apparently. It's also an indicator that this is affecting the bottom line of their business, where they're going to have to relook at their debts and relook at restructuring their entity. But and during this process, we will be able to ask the bankruptcy, judge that we should be able to move forward with this trial, because different types of bankruptcy could run on for years, depending on the types of it. This one is supposed to be fairly fast. That will get us hopefully back into federal court. And that's just a reminder that this is a federal matter. We are in federal court under a federal violation. And that this corporation also is already under a consent decree through the Department of Justice. The Grand Gateway is already being federally monitored by the U.S. Department of Justice, in this moment. There's 2 other lawsuits against this corporation. There's another family that's not even from Rapid City who had racism that they denied hotels to. There's the wrongful death lawsuit put forward by Blaine Pooyer's family, and rightfully so. These are bad actors in our community. And when we tackle systemic racism, we also have to hold bad actors accountable while we change the system. And so this is where we're at. This is the update, and this is a pivotal moment for us as a community. And I think that wraps up our comments section. And I think we can take questions at this time from the media.
I was curious about the strategies. You're talking about alternatives and strategies to bring the community together, and I was just curious about that because at the city council I guess it was the Rapid City schools. At the Rapid City schools, there were quite a few people who stood up and denied that, what had occurred as reported by the Office of Civil Rights. They denied that it even happened. A lot of people did. So I'm just curious about what the strategies are to bring people together.
I think it's very important to recognize that the Office of Civil Rights of the United States did a full investigation into the Rapid City area schools of a span of 14 years. These are not just opinions or accusations, these are facts. And I think as a community, we need to stand by the facts. And there needs to be accountability. And when we talk about strategy, we like you said, we also need to have alternatives, and we need to create a plan together to start addressing the root causes of the discrimination, of the over-criminalization of our children. And the way to do that is through accountability and really being open and having open dialogue with each other to start creating plans together. And that means community involvement. That means listening to Indigenous voices, Indigenous leadership, and also having people, having positions filled by Indigenous people as well. So I think that there's a lot of different areas, and if people just take a moment to look at the OCR report, and now in Rapid City area schools has stepped into an agreement with the OCR, there are section by section with deadlines of how our community members can have input and can come together to create a plan together to address the racism that exists within our schools. And so I think, the strategy really is community. It's unity. It's coming together to face the realities of Indigenous people. This is our daily, everyday life. Our children go to that school every day. And so I think it's really important to stop gaslighting us into thinking that these things aren't happening, that racism isn't here and it doesn't exist, and we need to face the facts. And so I think it's very important to start, for everyone to be informed. I think at the Rapid City Area School board meetings, what I saw was a lot of those people have not even read that report. Read the report. Well, what that's saying to me is that it's not important. What's important to them is protecting one administrator. That was important to them. We're trying to protect our kids. And so I think it's important to come back to that point, and come back to humanizing our children. And so that's what I would say to that.
And to add to that, just a little of what Matankala Sunny was talking about, coming together as a community. I'm the director of strategic partnerships, and being able to meet with folks and letting them know, like, in the end, we're here as we're trying to have these solutions, and we want our community to be involved. We're not the bad Indians, right? And so with the schools, working alongside the schools, there's a lot of opportunity with the Office of Civil Rights, that whole report, how they're supposed to address those things, and making sure that our community members know how to do that. So we can also serve as a liaison with them. And so looking forward to what that will look like with the schools. I know that they have their Indian Ed Parent Advisory Committee. They have an Indian Ed department, and they're hiring someone right now for that OCR complaint in particular. And so working very closely with them, because again, it's about our kids. It's really bringing it back to addressing racism so that our kids feel like they can have a safe place to learn and to be themselves and not to be isolated. And so I mean, there's a lot of opportunity, and I want the community to know that we're here and we're open to those.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to say in this too is this whole process has been like frustrating, because we're trying to use the laws that are designed to protect us to defend the rights of Native American people. Yet, a bankruptcy law takes precedent over a civil rights law, meaning that civil rights can be delayed because of capitalism, because of a capitalistic approach and prioritizing capitalism in society. And to be honest, we're far too used to that as Indian people. For the law to be interpreted a certain way for Indian people, and then for the law to be interpreted a different way for non-Indian people. I remember when we filed this lawsuit, the vast majority of elders that I talked to said, "Thank you for standing up. Don't expect that law to bring any justice to your people. It never has." And I remember that thinking. But we've always been here at NDN Collective trying to do multiple strategies. We understand that a legal strategy is not going to be the strategy alone to end racism in this community. It's just a mechanism to create some accountability for what's happening here. And so, when we think about broader solutions, I mean, to be honest, there's probably certain provisions in the bankruptcy law that need to be changed to give civil rights a priority. And those are policy things that we may work towards in the future to improve quality of life for people with civil rights, not only just in this community, but in communities all across the country. And the last thing, as it relates to your question around bringing people together, is we have to change. We have to have these conversations at every kitchen table in Rapid City. There's no forum that is going to solve this problem. There's no one town hall. There is no one human relations committee. There's no one thing that is going to solve these things. We have to bring these conversations to the kitchen table of every dining room in Rapid City. And there has to be a reckoning. We have to be able to share, the same history accurately. We have to be able to share the same data. I mean, it's one of the reasons why the Rapid City versus Racism campaign has been calling on the Department of Justice, for the better part of 2 years now, to do an investigation into the Rapid City Police Department for the killing of Native American people at the hands of the Rapid City Police Department. We've been calling on the Department of Justice to come here because they tell us that's not happening, yet we still are burying our people, right? They tell us it's not happening, our people are dying in the jail. They tell us it's not happening, our people are ending up in a hospital, So we know it's happening. But the purpose of trying to create a Department of Justice investigation into the Rapid City Police Department is so that we have a set of data that came from a third party that basically tells this is what's going on in this community and this is what we need to do about it. You've seen that happen with Rapid City area schools, and that creates a whole other body of work, but we're here for it. We're here for that body of work because we want to see this community move forward in a healthy and strong way, and we think it's possible. I mean, that's the other thing, right? As we're sitting here and we talk about all of the hardships, we talk about all of the struggle that exists, we talk about the division, but what is possible in this community is beautiful. The beauty is possible to be able to bring people together in a positive way to catalyze our community forward. And I'm looking forward to us entering into a new era of that, but accountability is a part of it.
What was it last night that you said we went into Inipi, into sweat last night? How do you say in Lakota, I have faith?
Oh yeah, so in Lakota we say, Woichula luhaho, like, do you have faith? Do you believe?
And I think that speaks to our work at NDN, is that we fully believe what we're working towards will come to fruition. I also wanted to plug too, there's an opportunity tomorrow at the Rapid City area schools is having a listening session tomorrow at Central High School in the auditorium. It starts at 5:30. go to 7:30. And it's an opportunity for the community to plug into, to talk about safety, but more in depth, the MOU with the Rapid City Police Department and the Rapid City area schools. And so I think it's really important for our community to show up, to speak about our experiences with the police department and the police in our schools, and also talk about some alternatives and how we can support our teachers through this process too. So, thank you.
Thank you. So I just wanted to clarify. So this bankruptcy filing does not mean that the lawsuit is canceled. It simply is further delaying it. Is that correct?
Yeah, this filing specifically is a Chapter 11 filing that allows for the business to continue to conduct business, and they're allowed to continue conduct business. But in order for the civil rights case to go forward, this has to be completed, because the bankruptcy filing law basically says that if there's other matters, that there's a stay put on those other matters. A judge in the bankruptcy filing could say that the reorganization of the Retsel Corporation doesn't have anything to do with this. That's up to a judge in the process, in the bankruptcy process. And our attorneys will ask him that. Our attorneys will ask the judge in the bankruptcy filing, giving us, we would like you to lift the stay. This has been dragging on for a few years now, and for it to move forward, and that judge will make a determination. We determine in this type of administrative filing that they'll be, hopefully moving through, Chapter 11 reorganization quickly, because this is not disillusion, right? Sometimes you hear the word bankruptcy and people are like, oh, the business is going down right now. To be honest, it's an administrative function. Disillusion would be, it would take years for that, but that's not what this is. And so, other factors would take into consideration of when this trial would be, including the federal judge Pearsall's schedule, and other things like that too. Yep.
Was there any other questions? Yeah.
I have one question. What would you say to the people of this community, to particularly the Indigenous people of this community who were maybe waiting for this trial to happen? What do you say to those that thought they would have their day in court, so to speak? And how do you continue to maintain hope through this?
So to our people in our community who are ready for this trial, we even had an Unchi who was ready to fill the courtroom this morning. I would say continue in prayer. We also wanted this to happen. I know that this is a stall tactic, but to continue in prayer that what is going to happen is what's meant to be, that we'll have some justice for our people regarding racism, and to continue to put those positive prayers out there that we will get resolved, we will get resolution regarding this trial.
I would also say to stay hopeful, and that we as Indigenous people, we're resilient. We understand fights for the long haul, and we talk about staying ready at all times. And I also want to point out that this is such a small piece of our work that we do. I know the Grand Gateway trial, it's big, and it was actually one of the priorities of this administration is to highlight and to prioritize protecting the civil rights of Indigenous people. I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out, but also that we have so much other work that we're doing. And so please, to our community, this is on hold. We're going to go ahead and set this over here for now. We have so much other work that you can help plug into, that you can take part in. come visit us here at our office at HQ. Come to listen to our podcasts. You know, we have a lot of different ways that you can plug into our work. If you have questions, you want to have a cup of coffee with us and talk to us about your own lived experiences or the things that you're going through in this community as well. We love to hear and be informed of the things that are happening in this community that a lot of people don't hear or talk about. We have multiple people coming in every week just sharing their stories of discrimination, different incidences by the police, you know, fighting for their relatives. And those are the people that actually give us hope to do our work. So together, we'll stay hopeful.
Yeah, I would say, the last thing I would say to that question too is that to all of our people out there, like, you deserve justice. Period. What happened to you, we believe you. Your people, you know, we are bringing light to these things so that they don't continue to happen. And we know it happens every day in this community. And keep sharing your story. Keep coming forth. Racism wants us to be silent. They want things to be swept under the rug. They want it to live in the shadows. And it is our responsibility to bring it to light. And the NDN Collective is here to be partners with you in doing that. That you don't have to do that alone. It's not NDN's job to do that alone either. It's NDN's job to work with the community to bring these issues to light and to stand together. And I will say to our non-native allies that our door's open. You can come through this door just like any member of the Native American community comes through this door. And our arm is extended in partnership because we want to see things happen for our people in a better way. Don't assume right away, and don't try to, when a Native person is telling their story, don't all of a sudden in your mind try to find holes in that story. Listen. Listen to them, how they're telling that story. Listen to their experience. Listen to their reality. Because that alone is already treating that person with dignity. That treating them like a fellow human being. And that the act of doing that is what we have to do consistently here. And I will say to the Native community that NDN will keep rising up too. NDN is here for the long haul. It's important that we don't back down. It's important that we keep talking about Native American civil rights, Native American human rights. It's important that we continue to both be in the streets and we also, being in the halls of trying to change policy for the betterment of Native people and doing both of those things. And we will continue to do that work in partnership with Indian people in this community and all across this country and throughout Turtle Island. Hachitu.
Bijat, thank you so much, relatives, for joining us for our press conference. Again, I'm Sarah Sunshine Manning, Director of Communications here at NDN Collective. And we just heard from Sunny Redbear, NDN Collective Associate Director of Organizing, Nick Tilsen, NDN Collective President and CEO, and Dr. Val Big Eagle, Director of Strategic Partnerships, addressing where we're at now with the Grand Gateway civil rights lawsuit. And as you heard from all of our representatives from NDN Collective, we're still moving forward. And so I also want to take this moment to, in addition to our panelists, acknowledge and thank every single person who helped us on this journey so far. There were so many people, thousands of people who supported, whether you were here on the ground, marching with us in the streets, at any one of our marches and rallies, whether you were right on that picket line with us, right outside the Grand Gateway Hotel, whether you were somebody who liked and shared our content or did in any other way, have even kitchen table conversations or conversations with your coworkers and friends about why it's so important to stand up and rise up against racism. And as we've seen, over the past few years, sometimes the process is long. but that multi-pronged approach to addressing injustice is just what we're here for, and it's a continuation of what our ancestors have been doing since 1492 at their own resistance. And so again, we acknowledge the collective effort that brought us here. The work is going to continue. NDN Collective is going to continue organizing, and we'll also continue to tell the story of future developments. I also want to say too, it's really important for us here to frame this with our own media. We invite the press to write and cover this story even more. We're really grateful to have a nice showing of press here as well. But here at NDN, it's critical that we create our own media too. It's critical that we continue to shine a light on injustice, to tell our own stories of our people from our own perspective. We continue to challenge mainstream media, challenge press to, number one, cover stories in general, and then also to cover them in greater depth and detail. But until then, until we're at that place where we have that great coverage of our people and our lives, our struggles, that's why it's so critical for us to also continue telling our stories too. And so if you are a follower of our work, we really appreciate it. And as always, it really makes a difference when you engage with our content, when you like and share. Just know that there are native storytellers behind the camera, in front of the camera, behind the scenes, everywhere, making sure that we're lifting up the stories of our people, and here at NDN, making use of every tool available to us, whether it's the legal system or mechanisms, knowing that there are complications there, making use of media, making use of organizing, grassroots, mobilizations. We're here for all of it. So thank you again for being with us, and more to come from NDN Collective. Thanks so much, everyone.